I talked about for the last couple years now how the current push in the online and real-world culture war narrative against teachers and educators having the ability to ever expose kids to the existence of LGBT people, trans people, or any politics or history that goes against right-wing propaganda is going to be a much stronger and heavier focus of the right going forward now, right? Like, if you've watched me, you probably know about this. I think I originally said that this era of right-wing cultural dominance that we're in was going to be called Teachergate. That was what I thought it was going to be called. Teachergate is what I thought it was going to be called back then. Obviously, it's, not really been named in the same way Gamergate was, but, well, I wasn't too far off with that name, was I? Considering this story. This is from niatoday.org. This is actually a organization focused on education and making education accessible to children, and like, it's like literally about educators and education. Like, this is a very well-received, reputable organization reporting that Katie Rinderly is not alone. The Georgia teacher that was fired for reading aloud a book she bought at her school books fair. That's right. They're doing it. They are firing the woke teachers. Nearly 6 months ago, on the day before Valentine's Day, Due West Elementary School in Marietta, Georgia, held its annual Scholastic Book Fair. Hundreds of picture books, early reader books, and more were available for purchase by students, parents, and Due West educators. Due West's gifted specialist, Katie Rinderly, spent $30.96 on 4 picture books, including Donna Esmeralda, Who Ate Everything by Melissa De La Cruz, about a stylish old lady who lives on diet soda and the uneaten food on children's plates. Okay, interesting. And My Shadow is Purple by Australian author Scott Stewart. My Shadow is Purple sat on her shelf for a month until Rinderly's fifth graders chose it for their morning read aloud. The next day, following a parent complaint, Rinderly was called into the principal's office. The book was divisive, she was told. The following week, she was sent home for good. And on June 6th, she was issued a formal letter of termination, which she is appealing with help from her union, the Georgia Association of Educators, or GAE, and the Goodmark Law Firm. This hearing was today, by the way. The reason I discovered this story at all was because there was a video in my recommended, a live stream from a local Georgia news station that had 40 live viewers. That's right, 40 live viewers. And the title of it was Hearing for Terminated Teacher, or Hearing for Teacher Terminated in Georgia for quote-unquote woke book, or whatever. It was a title along those lines, and I was like, what the fuck? So I immediately brought up the story to look into it. And guess what? Yeah, she's not the only one this is happening to. Today, Rinderly is believed to be the first teacher in Georgia to have been fired because of a trio of vaguely worded 2022 state laws that ban teachers from teaching divisive concepts, quote-unquote. Remember, these laws are written extremely vaguely. It's why, in large part, remember how a lot of conservatives would defend the Don't Say Gay bill by saying, where does it say that you can't say gay? Because these laws don't actually, in their exact wording, outlaw the teaching of, the existence of gay people or trans people, etc. But they are worded vaguely, so they're worded vaguely enough for plausible deniability, but they're not worded vaguely enough to defend against, so that the Republican lawmakers can still do the thing that the lefties said that they were trying to do with these laws. Basically, what these laws are meant to do is open up the ability for conservative parents who have a problem with what's being taught to their kids to have the teachers fired. Realistically, this is almost always going to be conservative parents getting teachers fired. Educators fear she won't be the last, which is likely the point of the Georgia legislation and similar classroom censorship laws in the other states. Teachers are fearful of crossing the invisible line in their classrooms because they don't know where it is, says Rinderly. It's very vague because it scares teachers from going anywhere near talking about, like, LGBT people existing or anything that might upset conservative parents. So, the teachers self-censor, pulling books from their shelves and shutting down students' discussions, or they just quit. The consequence is a grim and limited education for students who are experiencing less access to dedicated teachers, diverse books, and honest and accurate history lessons. But NEA members, through their unions, are also fighting back. Classroom censorship laws are on the rise. Georgia isn't the only state censoring, even firing teachers. Since 2021, 18 states have passed laws that restrict teaching about racism and sexism. According to Education Week, and 15 laws restricting or banning discussion of LGBTQ+ people or issues, according to the Movement Advancement Project. More of the bills center on the list of divisive concepts rooted in the 2020 executive order from President Donald Trump. That order, which was revoked by President Biden, banned federal agencies from certain types of diversity trainings, including those that talked about people's unconscious biases or the nation's long history of racism and racist violence. Yes, this is basically when Trump banned federal institutions from acknowledging in any form of training the existence of racism in the past or of racism, or like internalized racist bias. He just straight up banned any federal institution from being allowed to talk about it. In Florida, the Don't Say Gay and Stop WOKE, or Woke Act laws, basically, it's called the Stop Woke Act, and it is the Stop Woke Act, but woke in the name is an acronym. Stop Woke Act laws mean teachers have draped their classroom libraries in sheets and been forced to remove books, including The Bluest Eye by Pulitzer Prize winner Toni Morrison, The Diary of Anne Frank, as well as biographies of baseball player Roberto Clemente, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, and others. Yeah, by the way, The Diary of Anne Frank was banned, because that's controversial. I'm sure they tried to justify it by, like, claiming that the more sexual aspects of it were, like, inappropriate for kids, but you know damn well what they're trying to do by banning it. As a result, many Florida teachers are resigning. I'm not the first to leave, and I won't be the last. Support us, trust us, protect us, or lose us, warned Hernando County Oh, no! That's where I'm from! Ugh. Holy shit. That's where I'm from, guys. Hernando County. As a result, many Florida teachers are resigning. I'm not the first to leave, and I won't be the last. Support us, trust us, protect us, or lose us, warned Hernando County teacher Daniel Scott weeks earlier. Scott's colleague, who also quit, told school board members, "Nobody is teaching your kids to be gay. Sometimes they are just gay." I'm glad to see there are actually good teachers in my county, but it's sad that they're having to quit. I don't want the ones in my old county to be quitting. That's just going to mean more dumb conservative kids. There were enough dumb conservative kids in Hernando County, I promise you guys. Plenty. Anyone, hypers in chat, if you've ever been to or are from or have lived in Hernando County, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Like, there don't need to be any less... There don't need to be less progressive teachers in Hernando County, I promise. This is where they get their voters from. Yeah, they need to create new Republican voters by depriving a generation of children from having an education. It's the only way. It's also why they're demonizing college so hard, because, you know, those that don't come out of high school more left-leaning typically come out of college more left-leaning. The more deep and advanced of an education you have, the more high of an education you have, the more progressive you tend to get. The right tries to make that look like brainwashing. In reality, it's, oh shit, you mean that when you look at, like, history, like, inarguably across the board, the right have always been evil? I'm not from Hernando County, but the high school I went to was full of conservative kids. Yeah. One Florida teacher resigned after staff removed bulletin board posters of black leaders and Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman. Another resigned after a State Department and education investigation was launched into her showing students a Disney movie with a gay character. And of course, there's the one forced to resign after showing students an image of Michelangelo's David. Oh yeah, for those that don't know, they've gone over the top with these enforcements of the laws in Florida. In January 2023, Florida had 5,294 unfilled teaching jobs, according to the Florida Education Association. In 2019, that same number was 2,219. It's the worst teacher shortage in Florida's history, affecting students daily. Indeed, the Hernando math teacher who resigned pointed out that her math students outscored the county average by 15%, and now a sub will take my spot in my cold, bare classroom. And it's not just Florida either. Last month in Wisconsin, teacher Melissa Temple was fired after she criticized her district's decision to ban her first graders from singing the song Rainbow Land by Dolly Parton and Miley Cyrus. And in South Carolina, school teacher Mary Wood was run afoul of the school board for planning to use Ta-Nehisi Coates' book Between the World and Me in her advanced placement class. Wood's lesson was banned when two white students complained the book made them feel guilty for being white. To be fair, I'm pretty sure from what I've heard about Ta-Nehisi Coates, like their stuff is meant to make white people feel guilty. Like white people who read that shit are like the most white guilt motherfuckers imaginable, is my general understanding. Like, I'm gonna be completely honest. You don't need to read theory to know that America has been monstrously, demonically racist towards black people for hundreds of years, and that's why black people are in the position they are now. And it's just indisputable. Like, you don't need to read a shit ton of theory and like biographies and like historical breakdowns to know that. But I will admit it's nice to look into that stuff and, you know, sort of enhearten your knowledge on these issues. But from what I've heard, not the best. You guys in chat can tell me. Regardless, though, the lesson that got Rindley fired. Rindley read My Shadow is Purple before buying it. She liked it. I thought it had a wonderful message. Be true to yourself, embrace others, she says. Essentially, the award-winning book is about finding value in yourself, which leads to students developing greater self-confidence and well-being, she says. For gifted students especially, who often feel different and excluded from their peers, it's heartening to hear a story about valuing and embracing the difference in people, says Rindley. On the first page, the Shadow's rhyming narrator explains, my dad has a shadow, is blue as a berry, while Mum's is as pink as a blossoming cherry, but mine is different, it's both and it's none. And on a subsequent page, why can't I love sport and dancing and trains and ponies and glitter and engines and trains? You can't rhyme trains with trains. You can't do that. Why must I choose and exclude all the rest? I love choosing both because both is the best. Rinderly reads books aloud to her students from kindergarten through 5th grade because it's a proven strategy to help build community in the classroom. First, she reads. Second, that's like what we do here, guys. We're like a kindergarten class. Second, she guides them in group discussion, and then she assigns them a thinking task to complete in their sketchbooks. On this particular day, Rinderly asked them to write their own shadow poems. Their work was just wonderful, and it is driving Kennesaw State University professor Roberta Gardner a little crazy that none of Rinderly's critics can see that. The writing that the kids did was just phenomenal, says Gardner, an expert in literacy education who teaches aspiring and certified teachers. Yeah, apparently she's a good teacher and her students are smart, and they wrote pretty damn good poems for what you would expect from kids their age. An article from the Southern Poverty Law Center quotes from the poems. One student wrote, my shadow is white, an underestimated thing. When mixed with colors, it can do amazing things, but left by itself, it's kinda bland. That left me stuttering over a word or two. And a child wrote that. This is reader response theory in action, says Gardner. Developed by the late Louise Rosenblatt, the theory posits that every reader takes unique meaning from a text. Whenever we read anything, there is a reader, there is the text, and there is what Rosenblatt called the poem that comes out of that intersection, explains Gardner. Authors tell you that once it's out of their hands, it becomes whatever it is for the reader. It frustrates Gardner that lawmakers are writing these classroom censorship laws and school boards are enforcing them without understanding how students learn. I just wish it was a broader conversation about reading and also certainly about inclusivity, she says. What families and what children were considered when these laws were written? So the problem that these teachers are having is that they are probably not able to be as open about how politically aware they are, But at least in their messaging, it seems as though they almost think that these laws are coming from a good place. Like, it almost feels as though some of these teachers actually think that the people who made these laws were trying to do a good thing and weren't knowledgeably, actively, intentionally doing an evil thing. Like, there was no families or well-being in mind when they wrote these laws. It's just to make gay and trans people suffer and to guarantee future votes by ensuring less kids are exposed to anything outside of their comfort zone. National polls show most Americans agree with NEA members that students should be able to read books with characters that look like them. Regardless of political party, parents also say students should learn the truth about American history, including about chattel slavery and the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. A majority also say they're concerned politicians are banning books based on their personal opinions. So for those that don't know, there's been a long time battle in politics between, like, teaching a whitewashed version of the civil rights movement's history and teaching, like, the actual, like, truth of what happened. And the Republicans are in favor of the whitewashed version. Democrats tend to be in favor of the more accurate, non-whitewashed version. And, like, the whitewashed version is, like, the MLK was this extremely peaceful, beloved, changed the minds of America with his, like, peaceful way of teaching people racism is wrong, when in reality, the reaction the right had to MLK back in the day was not too different from the type of reaction they have today. Like, if this wasn't Martin Luther King Jr., you could assume that this was a modern-day conservative anti-BLM comic. I plan to lead another non-violent march tomorrow, and that's Martin Luther King talking. Because for those that don't know, particularly earlier on in his advocacy, Martin Luther King didn't really care about optics. Like, he just didn't really give a fuck about it. He wasn't, like, very aware, no doubt, of how important optics could be for messaging at times. And so there were times in which the right was able to take things that he was a part of and frame it this way and make him look bad. It was effective. Many, many Americans were against the civil rights movement because this propaganda worked on them the same way it does now. Yeah, Martin Luther King did not die a popular man among Americans. No, like the idea that he would be someone that we'd have a day after is a recent thing. They won't teach things about, like, Martin Luther King being a socialist or the fact that a ton of his advocacy was violent, because it doesn't make the idea of what liberals want left-wing advocacy to be look good. National polls show Together, many of these parents are working with NEA members to get diverse books back into the hands of teachers and enable students to learn about what NEA President Becky Pringle calls the history, beauty, and diversity of their world. Just this week, the Tennessee Education Association, TEA, filed a federal lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the state's prohibited concepts law, which interferes with Tennessee teachers' job to provide a fact-based, well-rounded education to their students, said TEA President Tanya T. Coates. Lawsuits have also been filed in Florida, Oklahoma, and New Hampshire. In Florida, in November, a federal... for those that don't know, New Hampshire may be where Bernie is from, but so much of it is, like, really rural, conservative, like, redneck bumpkin, batshit insane territory. It's really just the more, like, city areas of New Hampshire that are, like, nice. Or is he from New Hampshire? Or is he from another one of those fucking squished together New England states? Vermont, thank you. It's Vermont, not New Hampshire. I'm sorry. I mix up New Hampshire and Vermont a lot because if I'm being completely honest with you guys, those states that are so crammed together you can't even tell them apart on a map, don't matter. Vermont, you dumbass. You're a dumbass for knowing about Vermont. Bro, imagine caring about Vermont. New Hampshire, Vermont, like the only one of there's three of those states that matter, okay? 3 of those, like, New England states matter. There's a reason we call it New England. Because there's just so many of them that nobody gives a f***. They just call them New England, okay? It's Vermontmanshire or whatever. Who cares? A lot of it outside of the cities is really, like, batshit conservative cringe territory. Hell, even a lot of upstate New York is batshit, like, conservative cringe territory, too. High school social studies teacher Sally Stanhope helped to organize the event. As a civics teacher, she risks violating the Divisive Concepts Law daily, she says. That's very true. Teaching about American history now is basically like a minefield for all teachers in Republican states now. Like, I don't know how long these laws are going to be tenable when teachers are able to get fired for teaching. So when America was founded, slavery was a thing. You're fired. Like, how are you going to teach American history? Like, if you can't teach civics without talking about, like, black people not being allowed to vote or not being allowed to, like, take out loans or any, like, you can't actually teach the class. The reason you can't teach the class is because there are federal standards the kids have to meet in testing to pass that they won't know because it will be illegal to teach them. It's the same thing that happened in Florida recently with AP Psychology. They banned the teaching of AP Psychology under the grounds as, well, you can teach AP Psychology as long as you don't include anything about sex and gender not being the same thing, anything about gender theory, and anything about sex. Like biological sex. Like, you can do AP Psych, and you can teach it, but you can't teach those things. But if they don't teach those things, then it is no longer a valid AP Psychology class that can count for any credit. So that's just going to keep happening in all of these states that are jumping on board the let's ban kids from learning about anything woke train. Because the anything woke is the history they don't like, the science they don't like, the sociology they don't like, the psychology they don't like. It also nearly guarantees tons of Florida kids won't be able to go to college as well, because they won't have the required points and stuff going in, which is, of course, what Republicans want. They want less kids going to college. College turns people progressive. Who would have thought? Reality has a liberal bias.